Hello everyone, welcome to this training. My name is Stephanie. I am the teacher behind Mrs. D's Corner and the Intentional IEP, and I'm really excited to share this video with you today all about my interview bag. I see a lot of questions in our Facebook group and Facebook groups across Facebook for special education teachers and first year teachers about, do you take a portfolio to your interview? What's in your portfolio? What do you take to an interview? How do you prep for it? So I was like, well, I have an interview bag that I've taken to all of my interviews. The bag has changed over the years, but I wanted to share my experience from a veteran teacher, 14 years, 13 or 14, I don't know, I've lost count at this point. 13 or 14 years into teaching. I've gone on many different interviews. I've taught in, oh goodness, 4 different states. I'm certified in 6 different states. I've taught in multiple different schools, charter and public. So I've gone on a lot of different interviews because my husband's job moves us around. So I wanted to share what is in my interview bag, why I put these things in my interview bag, and I'm just gonna warn you, I don't do a digital portfolio. So I'm very old school when it comes to portfolio. I actually had to create my own portfolio for when I was in college, and so I just add to that now, but it's nice because I can pull it out in an interview and share things. So let me dive into the bag and show you what is in here. Now, I've not been in here for quite a while, so if I find something that pops out and scares me, enjoy the blooper reel. So this bag was actually gifted to me by one of my families that I used to work with when I taught in TExES. And so it's actually the perfect bag. It's really big. I used to have a different Vera Bradley bag, but there's so much stuff in here that the handles actually broke. I've taken things out of this over the years, but having a nice bag that isn't, I don't know that you would, some people might call this flashy. I wouldn't because of just the colors, but a bag that represents you and who you are as a person, but also holds everything in here. I like that this one zips at the top, so that way if I drop it or it falls over or flies off the front seat of my car, nothing is gonna fly out of it. So that's why I like that zipper aspect of it. So let's take a look at what do I include inside of here. When you're going on interviews, I'm gonna link the blog post that we have at Mrs. D's Corner on all of the different questions that you may be asked as a special education teacher at an interview. There's also some questions at the bottom of that video, or at the bottom of that blog post for questions you can ask your district. But a lot of questions that you get asked at an interview are going to revolve around what is your experience doing this? How do you feel about this? What would you do in this instance? Or tell us about your favorite lesson you've ever taught. And so I like to think of those questions when I'm putting things into my binder. And so I've not updated this in quite a few years. I don't think I have anything in here from when I taught the self-contained classroom, but I have everything else in here from K to 12 that I taught, extended school year, all of the things. So you're gonna get to see some of that today. So examples of things that I do have in my bag are, let's see what this is. These are my old teacher evaluations. Now, I probably wouldn't pull these out at an interview, but if they needed copies of them, I like to keep things in my interview bag so that way, like, my resume's in here, my references, everything I need is in here. If I ever need to pull anything out, when I go to an interview, if I'm offered the job on the spot, which has happened, and they're like, okay, we're gonna get you like sent over to HR, we want you to have all your paperwork, I already have everything. So I like to keep it all in one place so that I know where everything is. It also makes it really easy when you're going to update your resume or you're going to apply for jobs. Everything's here. You don't have to go searching for it or printing it or remembering your logins for different websites. It's all there. This is my other, from a different state that I worked in, my teacher evaluations. I have, this is just some slideshows from professional developments that I've taken. So there are some things in here that I may share, but I also it may just be for my own reference. And so I might go through this before an interview and take some of this stuff out, but I also have, let me find some of the good stuff. Ooh, so when I worked at the high school level as an instructional support team facilitator in the state of Delaware, this was years ago. I don't think they have that position anymore, but I got to help pilot the Why Try program. It's a really, really good program. So I like to keep things in here about what did I pilot, what is the Why Try program, what are some lessons that I taught. I have some student work in here. Oh my gosh, I remember him. So I like to keep that in here. So if I've piloted different programs, like I have helped my school pilot the N2Y and the News to You and the Unique program. So I would put that in here as well from when I taught self-contained. I also like to keep in here, and I have a couple folders in here, which is super exciting. I have some of my students from when I first taught ESY. This was, oh my gosh, beginning of my teaching career. These are from when, this is how I kept data for ESY. Each of my students would have a folder, and they would each, of course I like sharks, so they would each have their own folder with a picture and then their name on the front. And then I would block out all of their names and things, but then I would show work samples of things that we did during the different days. I would show, here's how we progressed on data. And again, confidentiality, hiding student full names, all of that good stuff. But I will take this from extended school year and share that. This is one way that I've collected data. I've also done this when I taught resource. We had folders for when we did Folder Friday. IEP work would be in here. So if I had those in here, I could easily pull them out. And if they said, what are some ways that you collect data? I could be like, oh, well, here's this folder from ESY. Here's how I did that. But I've also done this in resource. Let me pull that folder out and let me show you how I collected data that way. But I really love to collect data with sticky notes, which I'll leave that below here, that blog post. And then I would explain how to do that. So it's great to have these tangible things with you to share when you're like, oh, well, let me make this question more real for you and actually show you. So I'm actually showing you what I've done with work samples from me that I've done with other schools that I've worked with. I actually have some sample IEPs in here from some of my students, so we're not gonna pull those out, and I wouldn't share those in a meeting. If I did, I would make sure that I blacked all student identifying information out. If they were asking questions about how would you write a specific section of an IEP, I can easily flip through and be like, well, here's an example of one that I've previously written. Or if they were like, what's a known IEP no-no that you have done, like an IEP writing mistake? And we have a free webinar on the 5 IEP writing mistakes and how to fix them. I'll link that below here as well. But I would say, oh, well, here's an example of an IEP that I've written and I've learned from my mistakes, but here's what I did, here's how I would change it. So you could do that as well. I have examples of student art in here. I have letters of recommendation. I also keep a notebook. This was a gift from one of my cooperating teachers. Now it's sticking together. But she had all of my students sign it from student teaching, and this is my notebook. So if I want to write things down in the interview, I can write things down on my own thing. And now we get to the good stuff. I also have copies of my resume in here, which I won't pull out because it has a lot of self-identifying information on it. But let me show you what my actual portfolio is and what is inside of this. So this is my portfolio. It's in like a 2-inch binder. And again, I made this when I was in college. So I will add to it as I've done different things. And so I have different sections in here. So I have my resume, so I'll keep an updated copy of my resume in here. I will also have all of my clearances, so any clearances that you need to teach, your fingerprinting, all of that. I keep copies in here because HR always wants copies of that. I keep records of everything in here. So even old expired copies of things, I just put the new copy in the front. For whatever reason, that is who I am as a person. I can't let it go. So I keep all of that just in case I ever have to show it. You never know. I've never had to, but I have my teaching certifications from college in here. So I have that. I also have all of my transcripts, so you can see my different licenses from different states. I have my transcripts from the colleges that I went to. I have my Praxis scores. I also have my TExES, what they call them, the TExES, TExES. Those scores would be in here so they could see those. I have different evaluations that I've had throughout the year. So those ones that are in those folders truly do need to go in here. And so that's probably why they're not in here yet. They're just in the folder. But then, before I got my very first teaching job, I met with an administrator. My mom was friends with this administrator. And so she sat down and looked at my resume, and she sat down and looked at my portfolio and gave me some tips and things on if she were to interview me, what specifically would she be looking for? And so I want to share with you some of the things that she recommended. Now, granted, this was 2010, but still relevant today. So this is one of my extended school year supervisory observation forms. And so on this page specifically, I have a sticky note. And so what this administrator recommended was, okay, this is a good evaluation, but like, why? What did you teach about? The evaluation doesn't say that. It just shows check marks, right? So what I did was I went through and I added sticky notes to some of my favorite lessons that I had evaluations on. And so I wrote on the sticky notes what exactly we taught and the students learned in that lesson. And then here on these tabs, I also wrote this evaluation shows that my students are actively engaged, as well as my paraeducators. This shows how well organized I am and how impressed my superior was with my progress monitoring. So I can say that in an interview. They can say, do you have any examples of evaluations? Or tell us about a time that your superior was really happy with your progress monitoring. And I can flip back through here and be like, here is this evaluation, here you can look at it, here's the lesson, this is what they thought. And so it just makes everything so much more tangible in an IEP meeting, or in your interview. I will say you have to be very well versed with what is in your portfolio before you go into that interview, because you don't want to be sifting through your entire portfolio and flipping and being like, oh my gosh, I know that it's in here, and making them wait, right? Like, their time is precious, your time is precious. So you need to make sure you know exactly where these things are within your binder itself, or if you're going to be sharing things out of a folder, like what specific folder is it going to be in? So this evaluation, during this lesson, I was teaching students how to use a coordinate grid, and then here's my evaluation for that lesson. I co-taught this lesson with this teacher. And then this one, shows I included this in my evaluation because my superior commented on the high expectations I hold for my students and how I hold them accountable. And so they could look at this, and he has lots of notes on this page that they could read if they wanted more information on that specific topic of discussion, because that may be a question that comes up. This one was during this lesson, the PowerPoint was not cooperating. It took several extra unplanned minutes to set up. So that evaluation is going to demonstrate that, and that's a good way for me to say, here's how I kept students engaged while I was trying to get technology to work, and what happened if technology had not worked, here's what I would have done differently. So this lesson shows flexibility. So examples of things like that, and I keep them all tabbed, if you can see. Like, I have tabs, yep, there's a little spider. There's tabs here for the different sections of my portfolio, but then there's tabs, little smaller tabs within here, so that I can easily find different lessons that showcase different things. See? So that was what the administrator had recommended for me to do, and I have gotten compliments on that, being able to share these things and knowing what's been in my binder, and knowing like the back of my hand that I can quickly pull this out. And question that I probably will receive in this video is, have you ever pulled out your portfolio? Every single interview that I have gone on, I have pulled out my portfolio. And I will say every interview that I've gone on, I have been offered the job that I was interviewing for. I'm not tooting my own horn, I'm just saying these things do work, and they do make a difference when you have tangible things to show them in an interview. It also shows that you're very prepared. I have references in here. I also then, in addition to my evaluations, have sample lessons that I've printed out, and I've printed out the actual lessons and included them in here. Here's my food groups lessons. Here's our DRTA that we did on the Marley book when I was student teaching, so I have that. I have a unit that I had to do in college, but then I have student work in here from what they did. So I could also include any additional units that I've taught in. Again, additional artifacts. So praises, any attendance records, or different things I've done, or if I've gone to different, like I have done handwriting without tears, I've gone through that program, so I would include that certificate of completion in here. If I had done any of the intentional IEP trainings as a teacher, like you may have, I would include those certifications in here, because it shows that I'm a continual learner, and I would keep this up to date so that I could show them that if they ask, how do you continue to be an educational learner? What do you do outside of school hours? Because teachers always do, even though we do have to set those boundaries, there are some things where maybe we're gonna watch a webinar when we go home, or maybe we're gonna watch YouTube, or maybe over summer I'm gonna go to handwriting without tears because I really wanna learn that program. So I would keep all of that in here. What I will say is that it's truly up to you how you do and interact at interviews. You may not like this system, and that's okay. This is the system that works for me. It is what I've had in place for the last 13, 14 years as a teacher. And it is what I will continue to have in place as I continue on through education. And if I ever go back into the traditional classroom setting, this is what I would take this interview bag with me, and I would pull things out and I would update it before I went. But I know in this day and age, digital portfolios are a really huge thing, and you can easily share them on your resumes, link them in different things, send them to administrators. But what's really nice about having tangible things is, not because I have trust issues with technology, but because technology may not work. There was a lesson in here where I had unplanned minutes of technology not working. I like to have tangible things to show them. I like to have student work samples to show them. Just make sure that you're protecting student confidentiality, you're following FERPA. For all of the student work that you do show, don't show student names, all of that good stuff, student faces, make sure that you have them covered up in here. So this is what I take, again, to all of my interviews. This is my famous interview bag, and I hope that this video was helpful for you. I would love to hear in the comments of this video what specifically you take with interviews to you. I would also love for you to visit some of the other videos or blog posts that I have linked below this training. Don't forget to like or subscribe to this channel, whether you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube, for more different trainings on other things. If there's something additional that you would like to see, please let me know. I'd love to share it with you. And I will see y'all in the next training.